You're listening to the Full Phoenix Rising podcast. A church as a positive disruption for good. Hey, Duncan here. First episode of Full Phoenix Rising for 2024. And I wanted to do a little reset. I think this is probably ending up going to be my kind of dumping ground for thoughts and reflections on church stuff throughout the year. I still want it to have that notion of positive disruption for good. The thing that I wanted to talk about today is we've been on this journey as a church around the idea of heading into 2024. Could we do more spiritual formation stuff? And one of the ideas that if you're a John Mark Comer fan, this is not a new concept. If you're a Peter Scazzaro fan, it's definitely not a new concept. It's the idea of a rule of life, which, guess what, is not a new concept. It's quite an ancient practice. And what I like about it for the start of the year is the notion of, rather than making resolutions about all the things you're going to do and not do, is what does it look for you to create? And this is Scazzaro's idea, an intentional, conscious plan to keep God at the center of everything you do. As the starting point, as the foundation of any rule of life is a desire to be with God and to love Him. So for the start of the year, rather than mapping out all these things that you want to stop doing and all these things that you want to start doing, what does it look like for you to create this prayerfully discerned rule of life that says, what are the big rock issues that are going to go on this year? And as we look at those, how do we organize our life in a way where the Lord sits as the center of those responsibilities, and that we organize our life in a way around that to shape spiritual growth with God? Bridgetown Church and States says the idea of be with God, be like God, do what Jesus does. Sorry, be with Jesus, be like Jesus, do what Jesus does. And I think it's a really nice, helpful example. But what I really, and I'll talk a little bit about that more next week, but creating this rule of life allows us to find a focus for Jesus in the center of our busy and fragmented world, okay? And I think that there are various different areas of life that you can map out for these things. But the whole purpose of all of it is to help us move away from a sense of being scattered, hurried, reactive, and exhausted. And in fact, if you look up on the internet, there's a whole bunch of resources around the idea of rule of life. In fact, Practicing the Way has a really good workshop manual that you can work through. Pete Scazzaro has a whole bunch of resources on it. At the Heartbeat, though, you can kind of break these disciplines into three different categories. Okay, so one is inward disciplines, one is outward disciplines, and one is corporate disciplines. Okay, inward disciplines involve the idea of meditation, prayer, fasting, and study. So those are inward disciplines that you can do to help shape a deeper relationship with God. Outward disciplines include simplicity, solitude, submission, and service, to help us to make the world a better place, which is typically the outworkings of those inward transformations, is that we start to want to make a difference. And then there's corporate disciplines, and those are confession, worship, guidance, celebration, and drawing nearer to one another and to God. Okay, so the idea of just making fellowship better, being honest with God about the stuff that's broken in our lives, worshipping together as a community, and then mentoring, small groups, leadership, and all of that. And so whatever shape that is for you is actually prayerfully discerned. So your rule of life is really a goal about kind of shedding a whole bunch of busy stuff to help put Jesus back at the center of everything that you do. And if you do that well, then hopefully you will be less scattered, less hurried, less busy, less exhausted, and you'll have a schedule that is allowing you to connect and feel more connected with God. I think there's this beautiful moment, Deuteronomy 4, Moses' kind of final words to the crew before they go into the promised land. And he says, "Remember the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when he said to me, 'Assemble the people before me and hear my words, that they may learn to revere me as long as they live in the land, and they may teach them to you children. You came near and stood at the foot of the mountain while it blazed with fires in the very heaven, with black clouds and deep darkness.'" One of the things that he's creating is a concrete, real moment in history where there was an obvious presence of God that they can remember, that becomes the resonance of whatever they do. They can always point back to the moment when God led them out of Egypt and go, man, he was present then. And I could see it and I could feel it. And I think the starting point for whatever you do in relation to a rule of life starts with the notion of, what was the moment when God was clearest and most present in your life? What was happening? What was going on? What was said to you? What did you feel? What did you sense? Get back to that moment and use that as a springboard for whatever this rule of life is. All right, first one of 2024. There it is, rule of life. Next week, I'm going to expand on it a little bit with the idea of being with, being like, and doing what Jesus did. All right, full Phoenix Rising in the bag. Let's kick off 2024. Well, I'll see you again soon. Bye.